You should probably stay with Dewey while I scout ahead, I told Alyssa. No way. She disagreed before I even finished my sentence. You'll need my help taking Martin's men down. Listen, I'm just gonna go and My sentence was abruptly cut off by a sudden cough. I'm gonna scout. Come back soon. Hey, are you okay? Alyssa looked at me suspiciously. I'm fine. What's going on? Dewey said groggily. Sorry to wake you up there, buddy. Listen, Alyssa said softly. We're gonna go find those bad men. We need you to stay here, okay? Dewey was less than enthused by this, so Alyssa went on to explain why he needed him to stay quietly in the car while we checked out the mine. After a few minutes of convincing, he finally agreed when Alyssa told him that his job is to keep the car safe, deeming it as an extremely important task. We'll be back soon, okay? I told him and smiled reassuringly. As soon as we closed the car doors behind us, Alyssa took point and carefully proceeded on the old dirt road leading up to the quarry. The place seemed to be deserted, not counting the dozens of dead bodies of both humans and monsters. The rain still wasn't letting up, and my guess was it wouldn't be for a long, long time. We followed the arrow signs to 36, until we started hearing faint noises in the distance. The cacophony of screams, growls, and moans was definitely coming from numerous monsters, but we couldn't see in the dark where they were. We followed the only remaining path to Site 36, with the noise getting louder and louder. We finally reached an opening, and it didn't take us long to realize we were at the edge of the quarry itself. The noise was coming from the direct center, and when we looked in that direction, we gasped. Hundreds, no, thousands of monsters were converging atop each other like a huge swarming pile. Monsters of all shapes and forms, forming a nightmarish abomination of a mountain. Although a lot of the stray ones looked in our direction, they didn't seem concerned about us, but we tried not to make any sudden moves nevertheless. Look, entrance 36, Alyssa pointed at the distance. Looks like we're gonna have to go around them, I said. I don't think they'll hurt us, but let's be really careful and keep our distance. I took point this time, and just as I predicted, the monsters weren't aggressive, despite making eye contact with us. Still, we proceeded carefully around the horde, keeping as far away as we could from the big pile. The mountain of monsters was getting a lot bigger and louder than I thought when we got closer to it, and it became clear that the monsters were constantly falling and climbing and falling, over and over. Entering the dark mine labeled as 36 felt claustrophobic, but also relieving to leave the army of monsters behind. Carefully, Alyssa whispered, pointing her torch in front of us. The mine was pretty straightforward, and we ran into no trouble. Until we heard the voices, that is. Wait. Do you hear that? I perked up my ears. Bring him forward, a deep voice echoed through the mine. No, please, I never questioned you, Father, please. Alyssa and I peeked around the corner and saw a group of men standing in an open area, in front of a big tunnel. Two of the men were tightly holding a third one, who was struggling. You have sinned, my child, but you can still be saved, the deep voice said again. It was a priest. That was definitely Martin. Father, please, the man pleaded, but before he could say anything more, Martin slid a shiny blade across his throat. The man fell over with a gurgling sound, clawing at his throat and bleeding to death within seconds. Martin raised his arms high and shouted, Glory be to 36, savior of our world. The men around him did the same. I counted the men surrounding him. Aside from Martin, there were 4 other men, all of them armed with assault rifles. We can take him, Alyssa whispered. I nodded, and just as we were about to jump out and start shooting, another voice shouted, Father Martin, we found an intruder outside on our holy grounds. He's the one from the hospital. Father Martin looked down at the new prisoner and chuckled before saying, Well now, it would seem you changed your mind about coming here, have you not, Dewey? My heart jumped into my throat when I glanced there and realized they had a little boy as a prisoner. Dewey stared at Martin, visibly frightened, but not wanting to show it to the priest. Luckily, we have just the job for you in a few days, Martin continued. Take him to the source. Lock him up and keep a close eye on him. Before I realized what was going on, Alyssa jumped in front of our enemies and started shooting them with an expression of pure anger on her face. Without any time to think, I joined in, and in the frenzied shootout we managed to take down all but one of Martin's men, who fled into the dark tunnel ahead. My shoulder got grazed by a bullet in the shootout, but I was not seriously injured. Martin, come out, you bastard! Alyssa took a few steps forward cautiously. Out of nowhere, he jumped out and shot Alyssa in the leg, while standing behind Dewey, pointing a gun to his head. Not a step closer or the child dies. I held my gun trained on him, not sure what I should do. Shoot him! Alyssa shouted. I would have done it too, but all of a sudden my vision became blurry and I got dizzy, coughing violently. I felt myself falling to my knees and saw blood coming out of my mouth with each cough. Everything was getting dark. Father Martin, are you okay? More men rushed to Martin's side, pointing their guns at Alyssa and me. Should we throw them in the pit? No, Martin said while standing over me. They're as good as dead anyway. The next few hours were blurry. I fell in and out of consciousness and I remember seeing an unfamiliar face, a scientist of some sort. I felt being carried and I remember seeing a bright room. Sometime later, I woke up. It took me a while to adjust, but when I did, I shielded my eyes from the bright ceiling light. I looked around and realized I was in some sort of lab. A man in a white coat sat on the other side of the room by a PC, typing away. Various vials and incubators of sorts where unfamiliar organs were on the desks around the room. I shuffled on the bed and started coughing violently. Breathe, breathe. The man in the white coat was next to me before I even knew it. Who are you? My name is Dr. Andrew. I work in this lab. Lab? An electronic door opened and a woman with a crutch waltzed in. Finally awake, Alyssa smiled. Her leg was wrapped in a blood-soaked bandage where she had been shot. Alyssa, what happened? They took Dewey. I think they planned to sacrifice him. Dr. Andrew saw us on the surveillance cameras and took us into the lab. The government had this whole underground facility set up to study 36. Where's the kid now? I asked. They took him all the way deep into the heart of 36, Andrew said, to where the monsters are emerging from. Then we need to go save him. I stood up on wobbly legs, trying to steady myself. Alyssa sat down with a serious expression on her face. The doc stared at me with concern, too. What? There's something you should know. Alyssa looked down. Back when you saved me in the hospital, when you killed that volatile creature. Well, what is it? My heart was racing and my body trembling. I'm afraid you're infected, Andrew finally spoke up. The good news is it's not contagious and it doesn't turn you into one of those creatures. It seems to be a new form of bacteria which we've never seen before. So here comes the bad news. Once infected, the bacteria attaches itself to the lungs of the host and... Save the bullshit, Doc. How long do I have? It's hard to say. Judging by the progress of the bacteria, I'd say less than a week. I chuckled, unable to process what I was hearing. After a long pause, I said, You said they took Dewey all the way deep, right? Alyssa interjected. You can't be serious. You can't. I'm the only one who can save him, damn it. I tried not to yell too much, since my chest was burning. You can't do that with that leg of yours, so it has to be me. I have to do this one last thing before I die.